The silence of space was absolute, pressing against Commander Kalen's consciousness like a physical weight. 3 days had passed since the ambush that had destroyed the Aurora, pride of the Volari Confederation fleet. 3 days since he had watched his crew, his family, perish in a storm of plasma fire. 3 days alone in an escape pod designed to sustain life for no more than 5. Kalen pressed his forehead against the small viewport, his violet eyes reflecting the endless field of debris that had once been his command. The escape pod systems whined pitifully around him, the life support slowly failing as power reserves dwindled. Each breath felt more labored than the last, the recycled air growing thinner as the pod's filters struggled to maintain oxygen levels. "Computer, status report," he rasped, his voice hollow in the confined space. "Life support at 27% capacity." The pod system announced with clinical detachment. "Estimated failure in 19 hours. Emergency beacon continues broadcasting on all frequencies." Kalen closed his eyes, allowing himself a moment of weakness that no one would witness. The Volari did not believe in rescue missions. It was one of their oldest military doctrines. Those who could not save themselves were not worthy of salvation. Any Volari ship that might detect his beacon would pass him by, leaving him to an honorable death among the stars. His thoughts drifted to Soria, his homeworld, with its sweeping purple plains and twin moons that cast a silver glow across the night sky. He thought of his brother Talon, who had warned him against joining the fleet, and his mother, who had proudly affixed the commander's insignia to his uniform when he had earned his commission. They would light the morning lamps for him now, accepting his death as the will of the void. The pod shuddered, jolted by some piece of debris, and Kalen was thrust back into his grim reality. He checked the small storage compartment that held his emergency rations. 2 nutrient bars remained, along with half a container of water. He had been rationing carefully, but soon it wouldn't matter. Either the air would run out, or the temperature regulators would fail, leaving him to freeze in the merciless cold of space. He unsheathed his ceremonial dagger, the Kylith, symbol of his rank, and examined its gleaming blue-black blade. Volari tradition offered an alternative to a slow death from life support failure. A quick thrust beneath the ribs, angled upward toward the heart. It would be painful, but brief. But something in him resisted, some stubborn spark that refused to be extinguished. He resheathed the blade with a sharp click. "Not yet," he murmured to himself. "Not while the stars still burn." He returned to the viewport, gazing out at the glittering debris field. In the distance, the red giant that had witnessed the battle blazed like an angry eye. Something caught his attention, a flash of movement among the scattered remains of the Aurora. "Computer, scan for approaching vessels." There was a pause, longer than usual, as the failing systems struggled to comply. "One vessel detected. Configuration unknown. Not Volari. Approaching on intercept course." Kalen's pulse quickened. Not Volari. Perhaps a scavenger, come to pick through the remains of the battle. Or worse, the same enemy that had ambushed the Aurora, returning to ensure no survivors remained. But as the ship drew closer, taking shape against the backdrop of stars, Kalen recognized neither the sleek, predatory lines of a scavenger vessel nor the biomechanical horror of the enemy ships that had destroyed his fleet. This vessel was boxy, utilitarian, its hull patched in places with mismatched plates of metal. A salvage ship, then not Volari, not enemy, but some third party come to claim what valuables remained among the wreckage. The salvage ship slowed as it approached, maneuvering carefully through the debris field. Kalen watched, torn between hope and dread. Would they detect his pod? Would they care if they did? Salvagers were notoriously self-interested, concerned only with profit. A dying Volari commander would be of little value to them. Yet, as the ship drew alongside his pod, its engines powering down to a low hum, Kalen felt the first stirring of hope in 3 days. The computer's voice crackled through the pod's speakers once more. "Incoming transmission." "Put it through," Kalen ordered, straightening his posture despite his exhaustion. He would face whatever came with dignity, as befitted a commander of the Volari Confederation. The voice that filled the pod was unlike any Kalen had heard before, melodic, with an accent he couldn't place. "This is Captain Mira Song of the independent salvage vessel Odysseus. We've detected your emergency beacon. Identify yourself and state your condition." Kalen hesitated. Revealing himself as Volari might endanger any chance of rescue. The Confederation was not beloved among the independent worlds, but lying would dishonor him and his fallen crew. "This is Commander Kalen of the Volari flagship Aurora," he replied, his voice stronger than he felt. "I am the sole survivor. My pod's life support is failing. I have 19 hours remaining, at most." There was a long silence, and Kalen braced himself for the salvage ship to move on, leaving him to his fate. Instead, the voice returned, determination evident in its tone. "Hold position, Commander. We're coming to get you." The Odysseus loomed larger in the viewport as it maneuvered closer to the pod. Kalen could now make out details of its construction, the oversized engines that spoke of numerous modifications, the salvage crane mounted on its belly, the airlock that was now extending toward his pod like a metallic arm. Inside the Odysseus, Captain Mira Song stood on the bridge, studying the escape pod on the main view screen. Behind her, her small crew exchanged uncertain glances. Volari, Commander?" Jin, her navigator, asked incredulously. "Captain, the Confederation has standing orders to fire on independent vessels that enter their territory. They consider us little better than pirates." "We're not in Confederation territory," Mira replied, her eyes not leaving the screen. "And that pod is failing. We can't just leave him." "We absolutely can," Rhea, the ship's engineer, countered. Her hands were smeared with engine grease, her dark hair pulled back in a practical knot. "Salvage law is clear. We're here for material goods, not rescue operations. Taking him aboard compromises our profit margin." "And consumes resources," added Jin. "We're already running tight on supplies until we reach Outpost 7. Mira turned to face her crew, her expression resolute. "I didn't become captain to abandon people to die in the void. Theo, prepare the medbay. Jin, calculate the most efficient route out of this debris field once we have him aboard. Rhea, I need the docking clamps to establish a seal with that pod. It looks like a non-standard model." Theo, the ship's medic and secondary pilot, nodded without hesitation. "Medbay's ready, Captain. I've prepped for potential decompression sickness and oxygen deprivation." Rhea sighed dramatically, but moved toward the engine room. "I'll rig something up, but when this cuts into our profit share, I'm going to say I told you so." "Noted," Mira said dryly. "Now let's move. That pod doesn't have much time." The docking procedure was more complex than anticipated. The Volari escape pod used connection ports unlike any the Odysseus crew had encountered before. Rhea worked feverishly, jury-rigging an adapter that would create an airtight seal. "This would be easier if we could communicate with him directly about the pod's specifications," she grumbled through the comms. "The pod's communication system is degrading," Jin reported from the bridge. "We're getting interference." Mira's voice was steady over the comms. "Rhea, how much longer?" 10 minutes, maybe 15. I need to calibrate the magnetic locks to compensate for the difference in hull composition." "The pod may not have 15 minutes," Theo interjected, monitoring the life support readings they were receiving from the pod. "Its power grid is fluctuating. We could lose the seal mid-transfer." "Then we'll have to risk a direct boarding," Mira decided. "Theo, suit up. We're going EVA." Inside the pod, Kalen watched with mounting anxiety as the salvage ship struggled to establish a connection. The pod shuddered again, more violently this time, and a warning light flashed on the control panel. "Hull integrity compromised," the computer announced. "Microfracture detected in aft section. Implementing emergency seals." Kalen's heart sank. The pod was deteriorating faster than expected. Even if the salvage crew managed to establish a dock, they might be too late. A movement outside the viewport caught his attention. Two figures in spacesuits had emerged from the Odysseus, propelling themselves toward his pod with handheld thrusters. One carried what appeared to be cutting equipment. They were going to attempt a direct rescue. Kalen realized with astonishment. It was a dangerous maneuver, especially in a debris field where any stray piece of wreckage could puncture a suit or sever a tether. These salvagers were risking their lives for him. A stranger, a Volari, no less. The two figures reached the pod, and one attached a device to the emergency hatch, while the other kept watch, scanning for incoming debris. Kalen moved to the hatch, preparing for rapid decompression. He secured his K-lith to his belt and took a final deep breath of the pod's thinning air. The hatch indicator light changed from red to green, signaling an external override. Kalen braced himself as the hatch slid open, revealing one of the suited figures. A gloved hand extended toward him, and without hesitation, Kalen took it. The transfer from pod to ship was a blur of sensations. The momentary sting of vacuum against exposed skin. The disorienting tumble as he was pulled through space. The jarring impact as he was guided through the Odysseus's airlock. Then the hiss of pressurization, the rush of fresh air, and the face of a human woman looking down at him with concern. "Commander Kalen, I'm Theo, ship's medic. Can you hear me?" Kalen nodded, struggling to sit up. His lungs burned as they adjusted to the higher oxygen content, and his ears popped painfully as pressure equalized. "The pod," he began. "Is lost," said another voice. The second suited figure had removed their helmet, revealing a human with short-cropped hair and determined eyes. "Captain Song, welcome aboard the Odysseus, Commander." Kalen managed to stand, though his legs trembled with weakness. "I owe you my life, Captain. A debt that cannot be repaid." Mira studied him, with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Let's get you to medbay first. Then we can discuss debts." The medbay was small, but well-equipped, its walls lined with medical supplies and diagnostic equipment. Theo ran a scanner over Kalen, frowning at the readings. "Moderate dehydration, early signs of oxygen deprivation, and your body temperature is lower than it should be. For a Volari, at least." Kalen accepted the water pouch Theo offered him, sipping slowly. "You are familiar with Volari physiology?" "I've treated a few of your people. Merchant vessels, mostly," Theo replied, preparing an injection. "This will help with the cellular stress from low oxygen. Your people tolerate it better than humans. But you are still pushing the limits." Kalen's eyes narrowed. "Why would you aid me? The Confederation does not—" "Doesn't rescue its own," Mira finished, entering the medbay. "We know. Your military doctrine is rather infamous. Those who cannot save themselves are not worthy of salvation. A convenient philosophy when rescue operations are costly and dangerous." Her words stung, but Kalen could not deny their truth. "It is our way. It has been for centuries." "Well, it's not our way," Mira said simply. "On the Odysseus, we don't leave people to die if we can help it." "Even at the cost of profit?" Kalen asked, recalling the salvage ship's purpose. A fleeting smile crossed Mira's face. "Even then, though I won't pretend my crew is universally thrilled about it." As if on cue, Rhea appeared in the doorway, her expression sour. "Captain, we need to move. Long-range scanners are picking up activity on the edge of the system. Could be scavengers, could be worse." Mira nodded. "Set course for Outpost 7. Maximum safe speed through the debris field." "And our guest?" Rhea asked, eyeing Kalen with undisguised suspicion. "We'll be treated with the same respect we'd show any survivor," Mira said firmly. "Commander, once Theo clears you, You're welcome on the bridge. I imagine you'd like to see where we're headed." After Mira and Rhea departed, Theo administered another injection and handed Kalen a set of plain clothes. "Your uniform is damaged from the pod. These will have to do until we can synthesize something more suitable." Kalen accepted the garments, noting their simple, practical design, so different from the formal precision of Valari attire. "Your captain takes significant risks for a salvage operator." Theo's expression softened. "Mira believes that some things are worth more than salvage. Don't worry, we'll still turn a profit from this expedition. The Aurora's remains contain valuable materials." The mention of his ship sent a pang through Kalen's chest. "My crew, their bodies. We'll treat them with respect," Theo assured him. "Any we find will be properly contained for return to your people." Kalen bowed his head. "I am grateful." When Kalen arrived on the bridge an hour later, wearing the borrowed clothes and with his caliph still secured at his waist, he found the Odysseus's crew engaged in tense discussion. The main view screen displayed a section of the debris field where a larger piece of the Aurora had come to rest, a portion of the engineering section. Kalen recognized with a pang. "That's at least 3 days' worth of valuable salvage," Jin was saying, pointing to the screen. "The radiation levels are within acceptable parameters." "But we're not the only ones who've noticed it," Rhea countered. "Those energy signatures are consistent with Zeta Sector pirates. If they reach it before we do—" "We're not engaging pirates," Mira interrupted firmly. "Not with our current supply levels and a passenger on board." "Captain," Kalen spoke, drawing their attention. "If I may, that section contains valuable technology. Yes, but also the remains of my engineers. I would consider it a personal honor if they could be recovered." The crew exchanged glances. Mira studied him thoughtfully. "It would mean a detour," she said, "and potential confrontation with whoever else is headed that way." "I understand the risk," Kalen replied, "and I offer my assistance in whatever capacity I may serve. I was not always a commander. I served as a tactical officer for 7 years before receiving my commission." A smile tugged at the corner of Mira's mouth. "Are you volunteering to help us steal salvage from under the noses of pirates, Commander?" "I am volunteering to help recover my crew and valuable technology before it falls into dishonorable hands," Kalen corrected, though there was a glint in his violet eyes that might have been amusement. "The distinction seems important." Jin laughed, a short, surprised sound. "I like him." "Don't get attached," Rhea muttered. "We're dropping him at Outpost 7 with the salvage." "We're getting ahead of ourselves," Mira said. "Jin, plot a course to the engineering section. Rhea, I want the engines at peak efficiency. We may need to make a quick exit. Theo, prepare the cargo bay for both salvage and—" She glanced at Kalen. "Remains." As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Mira gestured for Kalen to join her at the navigation console. "Those energy signatures concern me. The Zeta Sector pirates aren't known for negotiation." "They are known to the Confederation," Kalen confirmed. "They've raided our outer colonies. They use modified Hunter-class vessels, fast, well-armed, but with minimal shielding to maximize speed. Their typical approach is to overwhelm with numbers rather than firepower." "Which is exactly what we don't need in a debris field," Mira mused. "Suggestions, Commander?" Kalen studied the sensor readings, noting the pirates' trajectory and speed. "They're being cautious, navigating the debris rather than pushing through. That gives us an advantage if we're willing to take more direct routes. The Odysseus appears well maintained. How are your inertial dampeners?" "Rhea keeps them at 100%, Mira said with pride. "This ship can take more stress than she looks capable of." "Then I suggest a more aggressive approach through the debris field. The pirates will expect salvagers to prioritize safety. If we push through at maximum thrust, we can reach the engineering section before they've cleared the outer debris." Mira raised an eyebrow. That's risky flying. I assumed your pilot was capable, Kalen replied. Oh, she is, Mira said with a smile. But I'll be at the helm for this one. Jin, relay the new course to my station. We're taking the direct route. The journey through the debris field was harrowing. Twice. The Odysseus scraped against floating wreckage, the hull screaming in protest. Ria's voice over the comms was a continuous stream of creative profanity as she worked to maintain shield integrity. But Mira's piloting was exceptional. Her hands steady on the controls as she threaded the ship through gaps that seemed impossibly narrow. Kalen watched from the co-pilot seat, impressed despite himself. No Volari captain would have attempted such a reckless course. The Confederation valued precision and calculation above all else. This human flew by instinct, making split-second adjustments that no computer could have predicted. There, Jin called from the sensor station. We've reached the engineering section. No sign of the pirates yet, but they're not far behind. Ria, Theo, suit up for EVA, Mira ordered. Standard salvage procedure. Jin, you have the bridge. Commander, would you care to join the salvage team? I imagine you can identify which parts of your ship are most valuable, both materially and personally. Kalen nodded, grateful for the opportunity. I would be honored, Captain. The EVA was both familiar and surreal for Kalen. He had performed countless spacewalks during his career, but never among the ruins of his own ship. The engineering section floated in the void like a great wounded beast, its inner workings exposed to the vacuum. Lights still flickered in some systems. Backup power, stubbornly maintaining minimal function. Life support module there, Kalen directed, pointing to a relatively intact section. Valuable for the filtration technology. And the quantum communications array to the left. It's damaged, but the core components appear salvageable. Ria, all business despite her earlier objections, directed the salvage crane with expert precision. What about this? She asked, indicating a cylindrical object partially hidden beneath twisted metal. Careful, Kalen warned. That's a containment vessel for our reactor coolant. Volari coolant is highly toxic to most species. The container appears intact, but I wouldn't risk moving it. As they worked, Theo moved methodically through the wreckage, scanning for biological remains. The medic operated with quiet respect, carefully securing each body they found in specially designed containment units. Engineering Chief Lorath, Kalen, said softly as Theo prepared to move one body. She had served on the Aurora for 15 years. Her daughter is a cadet at the academy. Theo nodded solemnly. We'll take good care of her, Commander. The work was proceeding efficiently when Jin's urgent voice came through their comms. Captain, the pirates have changed course. They're using thrusters to push directly through the debris field. Time to intercept is now 7 minutes. Wrap it up, Mira ordered. Secure what we have and get back to the ship. Ria cursed as she hastened to secure the last of the salvage technology. We've barely scratched the surface. There's enough valuable tech here to set us up for a year. There's no value in dying for salvage, Mira replied firmly. Commander, Theo, what's your status? We've recovered 7 crew members, Theo reported. Moving back to the ship now. Kalen hesitated, his gaze fixed on a section of the wreckage they hadn't yet explored. Captain, the command module may have survived. It contains the ship's logs, and possibly more survivors. There was a pause before Mira responded. How certain are you about survivors? The command module has independent life support capable of sustaining up to 3 days of operation, Kalen explained. If anyone else escaped the initial attack, they would have headed there. Another pause. Then, how far? 50 meters beyond our current position, through that breach in the hull. Pirates will be here in 6 minutes, Jin warned. Theo, escort Ria and the salvage back to the ship, Mira decided. Prepare for immediate departure. Commander, I'm coming to your position. We'll check the command module together. Captain, Rhea began to protest. That's an order. Engineer. Mira cut her off. Be ready to leave the moment we return. Kalen waited, as Mira maneuvered through the debris to reach him. Her spacesuit's thrusters leaving small trails of vapor that quickly dissipated in the vacuum. When she arrived, her expression behind her helmet visor was determined. Lead the way, Commander, and let's be quick about it. They pushed through the breach, entering what had once been a corridor connecting the engineering section to the bridge. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow over the twisted metal. Kalen moved with purpose, navigating the familiar layout despite the destruction. The command module should be just ahead, he said, his voice tight with hope and dread. Through that emergency bulkhead. The bulkhead was sealed, a good sign that the area beyond might still be pressurized. Kalen accessed the manual override, and with Mira's help, they forced the heavy door open. Beyond lay the auxiliary bridge, designed to function if the main bridge was compromised. Unlike the chaos of the engineering section, this area was relatively intact, but it was also empty. No survivors, Kalen said, his voice hollow with disappointment. I'm sorry, Mira offered simply. Kalen moved to the central console, which still showed signs of life. The ship's logs may still be accessible. If I can download them, we'll know what happened. How the Aurora was ambushed so completely. We have 4 minutes before the pirates arrive, Mira reminded him. Kalen worked quickly, his fingers flying over the console with practiced efficiency. Accessing command protocols. The final logs are corrupted, but I can retrieve the tactical data and crew manifests. Make it fast, Mira urged, keeping watch at the bulkhead. Jin reports the pirates have accelerated. New intercept time is 3 minutes. Kalen removed a data crystal from the console and secured it in a pouch on his suit. Done. This contains everything the Confederation will need to understand what happened here. Then let's go, Mira said, already moving back toward the breach. They had just cleared the engineering section, pushing back toward the Odysseus, when Jin's voice crackled through their comms again, tight with tension. Captain, they're here. 3 pirate vessels approaching from Vector 227. They've spotted us and are moving to intercept. Evasive maneuvers, Mira ordered. Rhea, I need maximum power to the engines the moment we're aboard. Already diverting power, Rhea confirmed. But Captain, we're still securing the salvage. We need at least 2 minutes. We don't have 2 minutes, Jin warned. Lead pirate vessel is powering weapons. Kalen and Mira increased their pace, the Odysseus growing larger in their vision. But Kalen could see they wouldn't make it before the pirates were in weapons range. A plan formed in his mind, desperate, but with a chance of success. Captain, alter your course to that large section of hull plating, he instructed, pointing to a massive piece of the Aurora's outer armor, floating nearby. What are you thinking? Mira asked, even as she adjusted her trajectory. Volari hull plating is designed to absorb and disperse energy weapons, Kalen explained. If we position ourselves behind it, it will shield us from the pirates' initial volley. It should buy your crew the time they need to secure the salvage. They reached the hull section, maneuvering behind its protective bulk. Just in time, a burst of energy fire from the lead pirate ship streaked past, illuminating the debris field with an eerie blue glow. Jin, status? Mira called. Pirates are spreading out, trying to flank us. Rhea has the salvage secured. Theo is sealing the cargo bay now. Good. We're on our way back. Prepare for immediate departure. They pushed off from the hull plating, using their thrusters to propel themselves toward the Odysseus's waiting airlock. Another volley of energy fire lanced through the space they had occupied moments before. They're targeting us specifically, Mira realized. They must have identified you as Volari, Commander. Kalen grimaced. Volari technology commands a high price on the black market. A commander's uniform and access codes would be especially valuable. They were meters from the airlock when a small projectile streaked past them, exploding against a piece of nearby debris. The shockwave sent them tumbling, their tethers stretching to their limits. "Mag boots!" Mira gasped, activating the magnetic soles of her suit. Kalen did the same, and they both slammed against the hull of the Odysseus, the magnetic connection stopping their tumble. They crawled the remaining distance to the airlock, energy blasts impacting around them as the pirates continued their assault. Once inside, the outer door sealed behind them, and pressurization began. "We're aboard," Mira announced through the comms. "Get us out of here, Jin!" The ship lurched as Jin engaged the engines, pushing the Odysseus away from the engineering section and the approaching pirate vessels. The inertial dampeners strained to compensate for the sudden acceleration, and Kalen and Mira braced themselves against the airlock walls. "Course?" Jin asked. "Through the debris field," Mira ordered, removing her helmet. "Use the Aurora's remains for cover. The pirates' ships are faster in open space, but we have better maneuverability among the wreckage." Kalen followed Mira to the bridge, where Jin was expertly guiding the ship through the debris field, using larger pieces of wreckage to shield them from the pirates' weapons. "They're still pursuing," Jin reported. "But they're being more cautious now. They don't want to damage their ships. Or the valuable salvage they think we're carrying," Rhea added, entering the bridge. "All cargo is secured, Captain, including our personal recoveries." Mira nodded her thanks. "Options?" "We could jettison some of the less valuable salvage," Jin suggested. "Might distract them long enough for us to slip away." "Or we could fight," Rhea countered. "The Odysseus has teeth. We've outrun pirates before, but maybe it's time we taught them a lesson." Kalen studied the tactical display, considering. "There is another possibility." The Odysseus's sensors indicated high concentrations of metallic hydrogen in this sector, residue from the Aurora's fuel cells. If we could ignite it with a controlled energy burst, we'd create a chain reaction, Mira finished, understanding dawning. The resulting explosion would disrupt their sensors and possibly damage their engines. "It would require precise timing," Kalen cautioned. "And we would need to be at the edge of the blast radius ourselves." "Jin, can you plot a course that would put us in position?" Mira asked. The navigator's fingers flew over the controls. "Yes, but it's tight. We'll have to thread through the densest part of the debris field, then execute a sharp turn that will push our inertial dampeners to their limits." "Rhea, can the ship handle it?" The engineer's expression was grim, but determined. "She'll hold. I'll make sure of it." "Then let's do it," Mira decided. "Commander, I'll need your expertise on Volari fuel compounds. What energy frequency will trigger the reaction?" Kalen moved to the weapons station. "Allow me to calibrate your energy weapons. A precise pulse at 3.7 terahertz should catalyze the metallic hydrogen." As Kalen worked, Jin guided the Odysseus deeper into the debris field, the pirate ships following at a cautious distance. Rhea monitored the engines, making constant adjustments to maintain optimal performance. "Approaching optimal position," Jin announced. "Mark in 30 seconds. "Weapons calibrated," Kalen reported. "Ready to fire on your command, Captain." "Rhea, divert additional power to the aft shields," Mira ordered. "We'll need the protection when the blast hits." "Already done," Rhea confirmed. "Shields at maximum." 5 seconds to mark, Jin counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. "Executing turn," Mira announced, taking manual control of the ship. The Odysseus pivoted sharply, inertial forces pressing them all into their seats, despite the dampener's best efforts. "Pirates are adjusting course to follow," Jin reported. "They're exactly where we want them." "Fire," Mira commanded. Kalen triggered the energy pulse. A beam of precisely calibrated energy lanced out from the Odysseus, striking a cloud of dispersed metallic hydrogen that hung invisible among the debris. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, a cascade of brilliant blue-white light erupted, expanding outward in a devastating wave. "Brace for impact!" Mira shouted. The shock wave hit the Odysseus like a physical blow, sending the ship tumbling despite Rhea's reinforced shields. Alarm klaxons blared as systems overloaded, and emergency lighting flickered on as main power fluctuated. Behind them, the pirate ships were caught in the full force of the explosion. Their lighter frames and weaker shields offered little protection. On the tactical display, Kalen watched as two of the vessels spun out of control, their engines disabled. The third, the lead ship, managed to maintain some semblance of stability, but its weapon systems were clearly offline. "We did it," Jin breathed, disbelief and triumph mingling in their voice. "They're disabled!" "Don't celebrate yet," Rhea warned. "We took damage too. Port thrusters are at 60% capacity. Shield generators are overheating." "Can we make it to Outpost 7? Mira asked. Rhea hesitated. "Yes, but not at full speed. We're looking at an additional day of travel, minimum." "That's acceptable," Mira decided. "Jin, set course for Outpost 7, maximum safe speed. Rhea, begin damage assessment and repairs. Theo, check the cargo bay. Make sure our salvage and the recovered remains are intact." As the crew moved to carry out their orders, Mira turned to Kalen. "That was quick thinking, Commander. You saved my ship and my crew." Kalen inclined his head. "I merely applied my knowledge to your plan, Captain. It was your willingness to take the risk that saved us all." A small smile curved Mira's lips. "We make a good team, it seems. Now, I suggest you get some rest. It's been an eventful day, and you're still recovering from your time in the pod." Kalen wanted to protest, to offer further assistance with repairs, but exhaustion was beginning to take its toll. He nodded. "Wake me if I'm needed." As he made his way to the small cabin they had assigned him, Kalen found himself reflecting on the events of the past hours. The humans of the Odysseus had risked their lives twice now to save him, once from the failing pod, and now from the pirates. Such actions went against everything he had been taught about the selfish nature of independent operators. The Volari Confederation viewed the human expansion into space with suspicion, considering them unpredictable and dangerously individualistic. Yet, these humans had shown more honor than many Volari would have in the same situation. It was unsettling and strangely compelling. Kalen was awoken some hours later by an insistent chiming from the cabin's communication panel. He rose quickly, disoriented for a moment before remembering where he was. "Commander Kalen responding," he said, activating the panel. "Commander, this is Jin. Captain Song requests your presence on the bridge immediately." The navigator's voice was tense, and Kalen felt a surge of adrenaline. "Has there been an attack?" "No, sir. But we've detected a Volari vessel approaching our position. Captain thought you should be present for the encounter." Kalen's heart raced. "I'll be right there." When he reached the bridge, the atmosphere was taut with tension. Mira stood at the center, her posture rigid as she studied the main view screen. The image displayed was unmistakable. A Volari dreadnought, its sleek, predatory silhouette distinct against the backdrop of stars. "It appeared on long-range sensors 10 minutes ago," Mira informed him without preamble. "It's on an intercept course, moving at high speed." Kalen stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the approaching vessel. "The Implacable," he identified. "Second Fleet, under the command of Captain Krath." "Friend of yours?" Rhea asked from her station, not bothering to hide her suspicion. "An acquaintance," Kalen replied carefully. "A traditionalist, even by Volari standards. He will not be pleased to find me alive." "Why not?" Theo asked. "Wouldn't he want to recover a surviving officer?" Kalen's expression hardened. "The Volari doctrine is absolute. Those who survive when others perish must do so through their own strength and skill. To be rescued by outsiders is dishonorable." That's absurd, Jin muttered. Nevertheless, it is our way, Kalen said stiffly. Then, turning to Mira, Captain, I must advise extreme caution. The Implacable outguns the Odysseus significantly. Krath will demand my return, but he may not stop there. The salvage you've collected, the bodies of my crew, he will consider them Confederation property. And if we refuse to hand them over? Mira asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Then he will take them by force, Kalen stated simply, and destroy the Odysseus in the process. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Mira paced slowly, considering their options. We could run, Jin suggested. The Odysseus is faster than a dreadnought. Not with our damaged port thrusters, Rhea countered. We'd never outpace them in our current condition. What about negotiation? Theo proposed. Surely we can reach some kind of agreement. We rescued one of their officers. After all. Kalen shook his head. Krath will see only that I allowed myself to be rescued by non-Valari. In his eyes, I have already dishonored myself and the Confederation. So what do you suggest, Commander? Mira asked, her gaze direct and challenging. Kalen straightened, decision crystallizing in his mind. Allow me to speak with him, alone. I will explain that I coerced you into rescuing me, that I threatened your crew if you did not comply. It may convince him to spare your ship. And what happens to you? Mira demanded. I will face Valari justice, Kalen replied simply. Which means what, exactly? Kalen's hand moved unconsciously to the caliph at his waist. Ritual combat, most likely, or immediate execution. Absolutely not, Mira said flatly. I didn't pull you out of that pod just to hand you over to people who would kill you for the crime of surviving. It is not your decision to make, Captain, Kalen argued. These are my people, my traditions. Traditions that would see you dead for accepting help, Theo interjected. That's not tradition, Commander. That's cruelty disguised as honor. Before Kalen could respond, Jin called out from the sensor station, Captain, the dreadnought is hailing us. Mira took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Put them through! The view screen flickered, and the bridge of the Implacable appeared. At its center stood Captain Krath, his tall figure resplendent in the formal black and silver uniform of the Valari fleet. His violet eyes, several shades darker than Kalen's, scanned the Odysseus's bridge with undisguised contempt. Independent vessel, he began, his voice cold and precise. You have in your possession property of the Valari Confederation. Surrender it immediately, along with any survivors you may have recovered. Mira stepped forward. This is Captain Mira Song of the salvage vessel Odysseus. We have indeed recovered salvage from the Aurora, along with the remains of several crew members. We also rescued Commander Kalen, who would have died otherwise. We intend to return all Valari remains and the commander to the Confederation. But the salvage is ours, by right under independent salvage law. Krath's expression darkened. You have no rights in this matter. Human. The Aurora and all aboard her belong to the Confederation. Your interference is unwelcome and unlawful. Kalen moved to stand beside Mira. Captain Krath, I take full responsibility for my presence aboard this vessel. The humans acted honorably in recovering me and the remains of our fallen. Krath's gaze fixed on Kalen, his disgust palpable even through the view screen. Commander Kalen, you survived while your crew perished, and now you stand among humans, defending them. Your dishonor is complete. These humans risked their lives to save mine, Kalen countered. They have shown courage and integrity. They deserve respect, not condemnation. Silence, Krath snarled. You have forgotten our most sacred doctrine. Those who cannot save themselves are not worthy of salvation. You were meant to die with your ship, Commander. Instead, you allowed these scavengers to preserve your unworthy life. Mira stepped forward again, anger flashing in her eyes. Now listen here. Captain, Kalen interrupted, placing a restraining hand on her arm. "Allow me." He turned back to the view screen. "Captain Krath, I challenge you to Kavish." A stunned silence fell over both bridges. Krath's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with calculation. "You invoke the ancient right?" he asked, his tone suddenly formal. "I do," Kalen confirmed. "By the traditions of our people. I challenge you to single combat. If I win, the Odysseus and its crew go free with their salvage. If you win, they surrender the salvage and I return to face Confederation justice." "Commander, what are you doing?" Mira hissed. "Giving us a chance," Kalen murmured back. Krath cannot refuse a formal challenge without losing face before his crew. On the view screen, Krath was clearly weighing his options. Finally, he inclined his head. "I accept your challenge, Commander. But as the challenged, I name my champion, Tactical Officer Vorin." Kalen's jaw tightened. Vorin was renowned throughout the fleet for his prowess in combat, particularly with the Kalith. It was a calculated move on Krath's part, a way to ensure victory while maintaining the appearance of honor. "And I name my champion as well," Kalen responded. "Dr. Theo of the Odysseus." "What?" Theo gasped behind him. Krath looked incredulous. "You would name a human as your champion? This is unprecedented." "Yet not forbidden by the ancient rites," Kalen countered. "Unless you wish to concede that humans are not worthy opponents for the Volari?" It was a deliberate provocation, playing on Krath's well-known belief in Volari superiority. As expected, the captain bristled. "Very well," he agreed coldly. "The human may serve as your champion. The combat will take place on the neutral ground of the ice asteroid at coordinates 227.89.14. Standard terms: to surrender or incapacitation." "Agreed," Kalen said. "We will meet in 2 hours." The transmission ended, and Mira immediately rounded on Kalen. "Have you lost your mind? You just volunteered Theo for a duel with a Volari warrior." "I had no choice," Kalen explained urgently. "Krath would never have accepted me as the combatant. He knows I'm weakened from my time in the pod, and none of you could defeat Vorin in traditional Volari combat. But Kavish allows for creativity and adaptation. Theo has the best chance." "Why me?" Theo demanded. "Jin is our best pilot. Rhea is stronger. Why choose your medic for combat?" Kalen smiled slightly. "Because you think differently. I've watched you work. You approach problems from unexpected angles. Vorin is formidable, but he is predictable. He follows the traditional forms without deviation. Against an unconventional opponent like you, that becomes a weakness." "That's assuming Theo agrees to this insanity," Mira pointed out. All eyes turned to the medic, who looked stunned and uncertain. I don't know the first thing about Volari combat." "You don't need to," Kalen assured him. "Kavish is conducted in environment suits on neutral ground. Each combatant is allowed one weapon, and their suits standard equipment. Vorin will choose the Kalith, our ceremonial dagger. You should choose whatever weapon you're most comfortable with." "I'm a doctor," Theo said weakly. "I don't have a weapon I'm comfortable with." "Then choose no weapon," Kalen suggested. "Use your mind instead. The environment suits have thrusters, magnetic boots, tethers, all tools that can be used creatively." Theo looked to Mira, who sighed heavily. "This is your decision, Theo. If you say no, we'll find another way." "What other way?" Rhea asked bluntly. "That dreadnought could blast us to atoms. At least this gives us a chance." Jin nodded reluctantly. "It's not ideal, but Kalen's right. This might be our best option." Theo took a deep breath, squaring their shoulders. "All right, I'll do it. But I'll need every bit of information you can give me about this Vorin and Volari combat techniques." Kalen nodded gratefully. "I'll tell you everything I know. And Theo, thank you." The ice asteroid hung in space like a frozen tear, its crystalline surface glittering in the light of the distant red giant. The Odysseus and the Implacable maintained position on opposite sides of the asteroid, each monitoring the other warily. In the Odysseus's airlock, Theo was preparing for the duel, checking the seals on their environment suit with methodical precision. Kalin stood nearby, offering final advice. Remember, Vorin will expect you to fight according to Volari principles. Direct, honorable engagement. He won't be prepared for human improvisation. Theo nodded, the movement slightly exaggerated in the bulky suit. I've been thinking about the environment. The asteroid's low gravity combined with the ice surface creates a low-friction scenario. Vorin's training will be based on environments with standard gravity and traction. Good, Kalin approved. Use that to your advantage. And remember, you don't need to defeat him through combat prowess. Incapacitation or surrender are both valid victories. Mira approached, her expression concerned. The Implacable reports their champion is ready. It's time. Theo took a deep breath, then nodded. I'm ready too. Be careful out there, Mira said, placing a hand on Theo's shoulder. No salvage is worth your life. I'll remember that, Theo promised with a weak smile. Kalin extended his hand in the human gesture he had observed. May the stars guide your path, Dr. Theo. Theo clasped his hand firmly. And yours, Commander. The journey to the asteroid's surface was brief, but tense. Theo used the suit's thrusters to navigate the short distance, landing with a soft crunch on the icy surface. The asteroid was roughly cylindrical, perhaps a kilometer in length and half that in diameter. Its surface was a maze of ice ridges and crevasses, some natural and others created by impacts with space debris. Vorin was already waiting at the designated meeting point, his tall figure imposing even in the bulky environment suit. The Volari tactical officer carried his Kalith, larger than Kalin's commander's blade, in a sheath at his waist. He stood perfectly still, watching Theo's approach with predatory focus. A neutral transmission channel had been established for the duel, and Vorin's voice came through with crystal clarity. Human, you dishonor the Kavish with your presence, but I will grant you a clean death, nonetheless. Theo didn't respond to the taunt, focusing instead on getting a feel for the asteroid's minimal gravity. Each step threatened to send them floating away, requiring careful use of the magnetic boots to maintain contact with the surface. The terms of combat are simple, Vorin continued. We fight until one surrenders or is incapacitated. There is no time limit. There are no restrictions on the use of the environment or our suit equipment. Do you understand and accept these terms? I do, Theo confirmed, voice steady despite their nerves. Then draw your weapon, human. I have no weapon, Theo replied. Just my wits and my suit. Vorin made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then this will be brief indeed. He drew his Kalith, the blade gleaming even in the dim light of the distant sun. Prepare yourself. Without further warning, Vorin launched himself forward, using his suit's thrusters to close the distance between them with frightening speed. Theo barely had time to activate their own thrusters, propelling themselves upward and away from the charging Volari. Vorin adjusted instantly, altering his trajectory to follow. His Kalith slashed through the space Theo had occupied moments before, the blade's edge catching the light as it arced through the vacuum. Theo landed awkwardly on a ridge of ice, some 20 meters away, the magnetic boots engaging just in time to prevent them from bouncing off into space. Vorin landed more gracefully nearby, his trained movements evident even in the cumbersome suit. Running already? Human, Vorin taunted. I expected no less. Just getting the lay of the land, Theo replied, using the moment to survey their surroundings. The ridge they stood on overlooked a deep crevasse that cut across the asteroid's surface like a wound. Beyond it, the ice was smoother, more treacherous. Vorin advanced again, more cautiously this time, his Kalith held at the ready. Theo retreated step by step, leading the Volari along the ridge and toward the crevasse. "Your strategy is transparent," Vorin called. "You hope to use the terrain against me, but I have fought in environments far more challenging than this." "I'm counting on that," Theo replied, and then deactivated their magnetic boots. The sudden release sent them sliding down the icy slope toward the crevasse. Vorin, taken by surprise, hesitated for a crucial second before following. By then, Theo had already activated their thrusters, using the momentum of the slide to launch themselves across the crevasse in a long, low arc. Vorin followed, his more powerful thrusters easily propelling him across the gap. But as he landed on the far side, Theo was waiting. They had unspooled their suit's emergency tether and stretched it just above the ice surface, creating a near-invisible tripwire. The Volari warrior's foot caught the tether, and in the low gravity, the impact was enough to send him tumbling forward. His Kylith flew from his grasp, skittering across the ice before coming to rest near the edge of the crevasse. Vorin recovered quickly, flipping in midair and using his thrusters to stabilize himself. But Theo was already moving, pushing off toward the fallen weapon. "Clever," Vorin acknowledged, his voice tight with anger. "But a simple trick will not decide this combat." He lunged after Theo, the more powerful thrusters of his military-grade suit giving him superior speed. He slammed into the human from behind, sending them both sliding across the ice toward the crevasse. Theo grunted with pain as they collided with a jutting shard of ice, the impact halting their slide just short of the drop. Vorin regained his footing first, standing over Theo with triumph in his posture. "Now, human, you will—" Theo kicked upward with both feet, the magnetic boots activating at the moment of contact with Vorin's suit. The unexpected connection locked their boots to the Volari's midsection, and Theo twisted sharply, using the leverage to throw Vorin off balance. In the minimal gravity, the move sent the Volari warrior tumbling again. But this time, Theo maintained their grip, the magnetic connection between their boots and Vorin's suit keeping them joined together as they spun across the ice. Vorin fought to break free, his greater strength giving him an advantage even in the awkward position. He managed to grab Theo's arm, bending it back at a painful angle. "Surrender," he demanded. "You cannot win this human." Theo's response was to activate their thrusters at full power, directing the thrust downward. The sudden acceleration pushed both of them upward, away from the asteroid's surface. They shot into space, still locked together, spinning wildly. "What are you doing?" Vorin shouted, his composure finally cracking. "We'll both drift into the void." "That's a risk I'm willing to take," Theo replied, redirecting their thrusters to increase their spin. The centrifugal force built rapidly, threatening to tear them apart. Vorin's grip on Theo's arm loosened as he struggled to orient himself in the disorienting spin. Theo seized the moment, deactivating the magnetic lock of their boots and pushing hard against the Volari's chest. The force sent them flying in opposite directions, Theo back toward the asteroid, and Vorin outward into space. Theo used their remaining thruster fuel to control their descent, landing roughly but safely on the asteroid's surface. Vorin, caught by surprise, took longer to stabilize his trajectory. By the time he had reoriented himself and begun to descend, Theo had reached the Kylith that still lay near the edge of the crevasse. "This is not how a warrior fights," Vorin called, his voice tight with rage as he landed some distance away. "There is no honor in such tactics." "Maybe not by Volari standards," Theo agreed, picking up the Kylith. "But I'm not Volari." Vorin charged once more, clearly intending to reclaim his weapon before Theo could use it against him. But instead of wielding the blade, Theo drew back their arm and hurled the Kylith, not at Vorin, but into the crevasse. The Volari warrior skidded to a halt, watching in disbelief as his ceremonial weapon disappeared into the darkness. "What have you done?" he demanded. "Without the Kylith, how can either of us claim victory?" "I don't need your blade to win," Theo replied. "I just need you to understand that I could have used it against you, but chose not to." just as I could have left you drifting in space, but guided you back instead. Vorin stood perfectly still, absorbing Theo's words. When he spoke again, his voice was measured. You fight without honor, yet show mercy when victory is within your grasp. I do not understand you, human. Understanding isn't necessary, Theo said, but respect might be a good start. For a long moment, the two figures faced each other across the icy terrain, neither moving. Then, slowly, Vorin inclined his head. I cannot defeat you without my weapon, and you refuse to use it against me. This combat is inconclusive. Not quite, Theo corrected. The terms were surrender or incapacitation. Without your weapon, in unfamiliar terrain, against an opponent whose fighting style you can't predict. Can you truly continue effectively? Vorin's posture stiffened, pride warring with pragmatism. Finally, he straightened to his full height. I, Tactical Officer Vorin of the Volari Confederation, Dreadnought Implacable, acknowledge that I cannot continue combat effectively under these conditions. I withdraw from the Kavish. It wasn't quite a surrender, but it was close enough. Theo nodded in acceptance. Then the duel is concluded. The Odysseus retains its salvage, and Commander Kalen remains with us until we reach Outpost 7. So it shall be, Vorin agreed formally. The Implacable will honor the terms of the Kavish. As they made their way back to their respective ships, Vorin spoke again, his tone thoughtful. Human. Your name is Theo? Yes. You fought. Unexpectedly. I have trained in combat for 20 years, yet you bested me with improvisation and restraint. It is worthy of consideration. Coming from a Volari warrior, it was high praise indeed. Theo smiled behind their helmet visor. Thank you, Tactical Officer Vorin. Perhaps one day we'll meet under more favorable circumstances. Perhaps, Vorin allowed. Until then, may the stars guide your path. And yours, Theo replied, the formal Volari farewell coming naturally now. When Theo returned to the Odysseus, they were met with cheers and disbelief. Mira embraced them the moment their helmet was removed, while Jin and Rhea looked on with newfound respect. I can't believe you actually did it, Rhea said, shaking her head in amazement. You beat a Volari tactical officer at his own game. Not at his game, Kalen corrected, stepping forward. At a new game entirely. That is why Theo succeeded where a Volari might have failed. Innovation over tradition. So what happens now? Jin asked. Will the Implacable just let us go? They must, Kalen confirmed. The Kavish is binding. Captain Krath will not violate it, regardless of his personal feelings on the matter. His crew would not follow him if he did. It would be the height of dishonor. And you, Mira asked. What will you do when we reach Outpost 7? Return to the Confederation? Kalen's expression grew thoughtful. I have much to consider. What I have witnessed aboard the Odysseus contradicts everything I was taught about humans and independence. Your courage, your compassion, your willingness to risk yourselves for others. These are qualities the Confederation would do well to understand better. Are you saying you might not go back? Theo asked, surprised. I am saying that my duty now extends beyond simple return. Kalen clarified. I carry the data crystal from the Aurora, containing the final logs and tactical data of the ambush. The Confederation must know what happened to prevent future attacks, but they must also know of the Odysseus, and how a small crew of humans showed more honor than our ancient traditions sometimes allow. Mira smiled slightly. Sounds like you're planning to shake things up a bit. Perhaps it is time, Kalen acknowledged. Perhaps it has been time for centuries. The journey to Outpost 7 took 3 days, during which the Implacable maintained a respectful distance, monitoring but not interfering. Kalen spent the time assisting with repairs to the Odysseus, his knowledge of Volari technology proving invaluable in adapting salvaged parts for use in the human ship. He also spent hours in conversation with each crew member, learning about their backgrounds, their motivations, their views of the galaxy. Each interaction deepened his understanding of humans, not as the chaotic, selfish beings Volari propaganda portrayed, but as complex individuals driven by a mixture of self-interest and altruism, just as his own people were. When they finally reached Outpost 7, a sprawling space station at the intersection of several key trade routes, the Odysseus docked at one of the lower berths, reserved for salvage vessels. The Implacable took position at a military dock, its imposing presence causing a stir among the station's civilian population. As the crew prepared to disembark, Kalen found Mira on the observation deck, gazing out at the bustling activity of the station. "Captain," he greeted her, "I wanted to express my gratitude before we part ways. You and your crew have given me more than my life. You have given me perspective." Mira turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "What will you do now, after you've delivered the Aurora's data?" "I will speak of what I have learned," Kalen said simply. "I will tell of humans who risked their lives to save a stranger, of a medic who faced a warrior with courage and compassion, of a captain who valued life above profit. These stories must be told if our peoples are ever to find common ground." "And will they listen?" Mira asked. Kalen smiled slightly. "Some will, some will not. But seeds planted today may grow tomorrow. It is enough to begin." Mira nodded, understanding. "Well, if you ever tire of fighting bureaucracy and tradition, the Odysseus could use a tactical officer with your expertise. The offer stands, should you want it." "I am honored," Kalen said, genuinely touched. "Perhaps one day, when my duty to my people is fulfilled." A commotion from the docking bay drew their attention. Through the viewport, they could see Captain Krath and a contingent of Volari officers boarding the station. Among them was Vorin, his posture stiff, but his head high. "It seems your escort has arrived," Mira observed. "So it has," Kalen agreed. "Captain Song, Mira, I hope our paths cross again under favorable circumstances." "As do I, Commander," she replied. Then, with a hint of her usual directness, "Try not to get yourself executed for heresy in the meantime." Kalen laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "I shall endeavor to avoid it." The rest of the crew joined them, coming to say their farewells. Jin offered a datapad containing star charts of less-traveled routes through Confederation space. Rhea, gruff to the last, pressed a small device into his hand, a communicator modified to work on secure channels. "In case you need to reach us," she explained with forced casualness. "For emergencies only, of course." "Of course," Kalen agreed solemnly, though his eyes twinkled with understanding. Theo approached last, holding out a small medical kit. "Volari-specific supplies. I synthesized them based on your physiology, just in case." Kalen accepted the gift, deeply moved by their thoughtfulness. "Thank you, all of you. Know that you have an ally among the Volari, wherever I may be." As they made their way to the docking bay where Captain Krath waited, Theo fell into step beside Kalen. "What do you think they'll do? Your people? I mean, when they hear what happened?" "They will be shocked," Kalen admitted. "Outraged, some of them. But others will be curious. The seed of doubt has been planted, first in Vorin, who experienced human mercy firsthand, and now in me. If the mighty Volari Confederation can be defeated in battle, perhaps it can also be mistaken in its doctrines." "That's a lot of responsibility to place on one person's shoulders," Theo observed. Kalen nodded. "Yes, but as your Captain Song has shown me, sometimes one person making the right choice can change everything." They reached the docking bay, where Captain Krath and his officers waited with barely concealed impatience. Krath's eyes narrowed as he saw Kalen approaching with the humans, but he maintained a rigid formality. "Commander Kalen, The Confederation welcomes your return. We have much to discuss regarding the Aurora's destruction. Indeed we do, Captain, Kalen agreed. And much more besides. He turned to face the Odysseus crew one last time, placing his hand over his heart in the traditional Volari salute. Until the stars align again, my friends. Mira returned the gesture, followed by the others. Safe journey, Commander. As Kalen walked away with his fellow Volari, Vorin fell into step beside him. The humans are not what I expected, the tactical officer murmured, pitching his voice too low for Krath to overhear. Nor what I expected, Kalen agreed quietly. Perhaps that is the beginning of wisdom, recognizing when our expectations fail to match reality. Vorin considered this, then nodded almost imperceptibly. Perhaps. Behind them, the crew of the Odysseus watched as Kalen disappeared into the Volari contingent, his straight-backed figure gradually blending with the others, until he was indistinguishable in the mass of formal black uniforms. Think we'll ever see him again? Jin wondered aloud. I'd bet on it, Mira replied with certainty. Some people are meant to change things. He's one of them. Theo smiled, remembering the determination in Kalen's violet eyes. And some people are meant to be changed. I think we all were. As the Odysseus prepared to depart Outpost 7, its holds filled with valuable salvage, and its crew forever altered by their encounter with the lone Volari commander. Word was already spreading through the station. Rumors of a human medic who had defeated a Volari warrior in ritual combat. Whispers of a Confederation commander who spoke of mercy and cooperation rather than the ancient doctrines. Small stories, perhaps, in the vast expanse of the galaxy. But like stars in the darkness, sometimes the smallest lights shine the furthest. In the silence of space, the Odysseus charted a new course, its unexpected heroes carrying their tale to distant worlds. And somewhere within the rigid hierarchy of the Volari Confederation, a commander, once left to die, began to speak of the humans who had pierced through that silence, bringing with them not just rescue, but the possibility of change.